and I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out.
Tonight's episode is brought to you by Dinesh D'Souza's new movie, The Dragon's Prophecy, based on the #1 international bestseller by Jonathan Kahn. The Dragon's Prophecy offers new understanding on Israel, radical Islam, anti-Semitism, and biblical prophecy. Could it be that the fate of the world, of all of humanity itself, is tied to what we're seeing now in the Middle East? In theaters 2 nights only, October 6th and 8th, and streaming and DVDs available October 9th. All tickets and pre-orders at thedragonsprophecyfilm.com. Tonight, we're joined by managing editor of Newsbusters, Curtis Houck. Curtis, welcome to the show. Tell us about Newsbusters. Tell us what it does, and how have the last 2 weeks been for you guys?
Well, it's been pretty crazy. We at the Media Research Center have been around since 1987. We had humble beginnings. Brent Bozell, Brent Baker, and Larry Gourlay were our 3 co-founders, with a bunch of VHS tapes and a dream to simply repeat back what the liberal media are saying. And we've had quite the journey since then. Newsbusters has been around since 2005, the main outfit, website, vehicle to press out our cutting-edge research. Jake Tapper says we're non-credible and unreliable, but I like to beg to differ. We provide all sorts of media bias analysis, both on a qualitative and quantitative basis. We have transcripts that just simply read back what the liberal journalists are saying. If you disagree with our analysis, we provide the evidence and our methodology to our number studies, the 92% negative number that the president has been talking about frequently. And it's gone up and down over the years, 97, 96, 94. We go into all of that as well. The last 2 weeks, it's been pretty heavy in the country, but we at Newsbusters have not been deterred, pressing on. Jimmy Kimmel coming down, being put on ice is something that we definitely weren't expecting, but we were definitely prepared for. Our Alex Christie, who is our late night beat writer, has been chronicling every single Jimmy Kimmel episode since September of 2022.
Oh, wow.
He's found 92%.
I hope you get overpay for that, overtime pay for that. It's a tough
Well, if he gets overtime pay, my colleague Nick Fondacaro, who writes about The View, should get hazard pay.
God.
Then.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sorry, I want to know what you found.
Yeah, well, no, and I watched the White House press briefing. So with Karine Jean-Pierre, I mean, I got a crash course in how not to speak English. Jimmy Kimmel, 92% of all political jokes since we started tracking in September 2022 have targeted conservatives. That's pretty crazy. And 97% of all political guests were liberal, 61-2. And the 2 is kind of an asterisk because they're the same person, Mike Lindell, and it was to lampoon him.
Yeah.
So we've been looking at that, the Charlie Kirk coverage as well. And I don't want folks to forget the huge Bureau of Labor Statistics revision, that they said that the Biden economy was roaring, and now the president has come in and his team have looked at the numbers and said, that's not what was actually going on there. We found ahead of the election that September jobs report received 13.5 minutes on ABC, CBS, and NBC in just 2 days. The revision to say, oh, wait, the Biden economy that President Trump inherited that was actually struggling, it was only about 7 minutes. So we've been, all over the place, and obviously all the Charlie Kirk coverage as well.
Yeah, well, I want to talk to you about the Charlie Kirk stuff, too. First of all, let me just state that if Jake Tapper has some sort of an issue with you, it's probably a sign that you're doing something right. So we'll just start there. And I'm glad that you talked about Jimmy Kimmel. First of all, Jimmy Kimmel, anybody saw those episodes with Mike Lindell, you're right. It was just to make fun of him. One of them, he was in a giant claw machine, if I remember correctly. Is that right? And didn't they do that to him? The whole thing is, it's really kind of gross. And for the people who are outraged that Jimmy Kimmel has, as you said very nicely, been put on ice for a little bit. You know what? It's about time, I feel like, that in this country, Curtis, we start at least being accountable for what people who represent a company are saying. So ABC News found that this was an inappropriate time to be making the sort of suggestions that Jimmy Kimmel was. Now, there's so much, in the wake of this assassination of Charlie Kirk. Obviously, it's all we've all been talking about because, Curtis, you said heavy. It was so heavy. This has been a very different time than I think any of us have seen ever in America. It felt like this one was different. And then you have people like Jimmy Kimmel. You have folks in the mainstream media, folks on CNN, MSNBC, framing the suspects' motives and all of the things they've done. Just tell me what biases you've seen and the downplay of any sort of political connections that maybe you guys have seen out there within the legacy media.
Yeah, Larry, I mean, it's been kind of what I've seen as like a 4-part journey. The initial coverage, you had the Matthew Dowd, the hateful thoughts lead to hateful actions. When we found out Charlie was just shot, we didn't know his condition. People said he was controversial. He was a lightning rod. He was engaged in the culture wars, those pesky things. And then it kind of, you also had people who were somber. It was very interesting because for a profession that engages and operates and lives on groupthink, it was, I wanted to see which journalists would break through and kind of have their own individual unique opinions. Even Brian Stelter was very touching, pointing out that the only way this country works is if we can talk through our differences with words and not violence. But I think he was the exception. And then we moved to the Jimmy Kimmel example. Maybe he was a right-winger. You had Heather Cox Richardson, a famous academic on her Substack, point out this. CBS's John Dickerson said it was vague. We only had vague secondhand testimony. The motive was elusive. And then we moved to he himself is responsible for his own actions, which we all know that's not what the liberal media did during the president's first term. When things like the Tree of Life synagogue shooting, the Walmart shooting in El Paso, the president was blamed directly for those things, even though there was no evidence whatsoever to tie the president wanting to secure our southern border with really awful racist attacks, and then one on Jews in Pittsburgh. But then we moved to the most bizarre one, which we kind of still are with some folks, which is it was love. It was the power of love. We had the ABC reporter that I first flagged called it so touching and wholesome, and that he could be such a cold, calculated murderer and so loving of his transgender partner at the same time. CNN did this as well. So I think this is all this to say. What's interesting in the Charlie Kirk coverage is the liberal media, when something shocking happens, they kind of struggle to find a narrative. And for this one, they kind of have. And there's been mistakes all along the way. But I think this proves that cable news, CNN and MSNBC in particular, are bad for the country because they're just so invective. They're so hateful. They're going a million miles an hour. They're always trying to find a way to get the upper hand against us, instead of just simply trying to be humans and show that a lot of Americans are grieving.
I mean, and I think that's the whole thing that really shocks me, Curtis, is that when someone is murdered in cold blood, when someone is assassinated, and we all saw it, whether you wanted to see it or not, you probably saw it out there, we should all be able to take a moment and to say, this is wrong, period. Like, you don't need anything on the other side of that. This is wrong. This should not have happened. It shouldn't happen anywhere. It definitely should not happen in America when someone is exercising their First Amendment rights. You saw the way that people, though, melted down, just to go back for a moment to Kimmel, because it's sort of what everyone continues to talk about. You have people like ABC's Jonathan Karl, who blamed the FCC for Kimmel's suspension, despite the fact that there are a lot of reports of advertiser pressure, right? I mean, no advertiser wants to put their money behind a show where, first of all, I don't know who's tuning in to Jimmy Kimmel. I haven't in years. I don't know who wants to watch someone spew that hateful rhetoric just, on the other side of someone losing their life in such a horrific way. And I think a lot of people said, wait a minute, this is a step too far. Advertisers don't want to put their money behind that. So, I mean, this is sort of more of the media misinformation that we typically see out there to shield these liberal figures. Like, otherwise, Jimmy Kimmel would have to be responsible for what he said, and he would have to own it, right?
Yeah. I think there's a couple things going on here. Number one, people need to realize that Jimmy Kimmel is a personal friend to a lot of these liberal journalists.
Totally.
So this is something that is personal for them. Someone on their team has been taken down a few pegs. It's a show that they can't go on and promote their books anymore. Jake Tapper in particular. Jake Tapper infamously has been to a birthday party of his that looked like a who's who of Hollywood sitting around a dinner table. So you have that as well. And also, it's a bias by omission case as well, because yes, what Kimmel said was wrong. It was a lie, and it was also distasteful, to put it mildly. The comment about the president being a 4-year-old grieving a goldfish. I mean, like, where's the punchline in that? The liberal media seem to have found their victim in the Charlie Kirk assassination, and it's not Charlie Kirk. For some reason, these people think it's Jimmy Kimmel. And the bias by omission angle, so often of what we do at the Media Research Center since 1987, even what's true then is true now. It's what people leave out that is often the worst kind of bias. And in that, you are exactly right to bring up the reporting that there was advertiser pressure, there was affiliate pressure. Disney executives had met with Kimmel and said, what are you going to say about all of this? And he more or less said, I'm going to flip them off and double down. And Disney said, no. We cannot do this. And you bring up the ratings last point there. It is about a third of what Greg Gutfeld is pulling in. And of course, ABC, CBS, NBC, you can still get via the old rabbit ears. So they're in way more homes than really any other channel. So they have a public interest that Chairman Carr has been talking about. A lot of these FCC provisions that the media are freaking out about, they've just never been enforced before. It's kind of like the president enforcing the laws on the books about the border. They're mad about it because they exist. They don't require a new act of Congress.
Right. Nearly 2 years ago, terrorists murdered over 1,200 innocent Israelis and took 250 hostages. Today, the cries of the dead and dying seem drowned out by shouts of anti-Semitic hatred. The most brutal attack on Jewish people since the Holocaust is already fading from memory. Yet as the world looks away, a light breaks through the darkness. Christians are speaking out in love and support for Israel. United in faith, they will boldly stand with Israel this October, joining a growing movement, the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, Flags of Fellowship. Flags of Fellowship unites churches all over America, planting over 1 million Israeli flags across our land. Together we will combat hate and the scourge of anti-Semitism, one flag at a time. And through our prayers, we can save lives, bring hope, and be part of seeing a brighter future unfold. This October, please join this historic movement by donating your flag today. Raise your voice, declare your stand, and show the world that Israel is not alone. Visit ifcj.org. That's ifcj.org. There's a new docufilm by Angel called RFK Legacy. I encourage you all to watch it. It's produced by Oliver Stone, and it tells the story of Robert F. Kennedy, a man who stood for truth and justice and who ultimately gave everything for it, and how his son, my friend RFK Jr., has carried that torch forward. History repeats itself. Giant voices silenced, families left grieving, and a movement left asking, where do we go from here? If you're feeling the weight of what's happened, like I am, I want to encourage you to watch RFK Legacy. Let me remind you that we honor those we lose by refusing to stay silent. Let's be like RFK Jr. and his father and have the determination and resolve to help make the world a better place. Stream it today at Angel. Talk about it with your family and friends, and let it inspire you to keep shining a light in dark places. Because when history echoes, we can answer back with courage. No, exactly. The omission stuff I think is very interesting, and it just made me think about the very famous Very Fine People hoax, Curtis. And if anyone is curious about what that is, this is during President Trump's first term in office, where there was this incident in Charlottesville, Virginia. it was bad. There was someone that was killed, and you had this group of individuals who wanted to protect a statue, a historic statue, and then you had these people who said the statue's racist and we want to tear it down. Now, mixed in with both of those groups were bad people. You had white supremacists who tried to masquerade as these people who cared about history, and then you had, these individuals who were trying to cause a lot of problems. I don't know if it was Antifa or Black Lives Matter or whoever these people were. But anyway, they just wanted to cause problems, right? And so when the president was asked about it, his exact speech, the exact things that he said, there were very fine people on both sides. That's where the media, Curtis, cut it off. He said, except the neo-Nazis and white supremacists who should be condemned totally. Now, the media left that out. The vast majority of folks in the media did not play the second part, which is all of it, which is the biggest part of it,
right? Of
course. But that's what they do. That's how they're so slippery and they're so slick. And they've been trying to do it, by the way, with Charlie Kirk since he was murdered. They've been trying to show these clips out there and say, but wait, he was a bad guy. Look at this. But you play the whole soundbite, Curtis, and it obviously has a completely different meaning. I feel like this day and age, we can no longer rely on these sort of outlets to give us real information. It is up to us to go out and seek that information out. You have so many sources to gather information out there. It's a different landscape than it was, decades ago. But this is up to we, the people. We've got to take this under, it's got to be our accountability. We can't rely on any of these people anymore, I don't think.
Yeah, unfortunately, this requires the American people to do a little bit more legwork than you normally would, that you used to have. And on the very fine people hoax, what's interesting about that is that probably would be the worst single greatest active media malpractice against the president from his first term if it weren't for the Russia probe running around saying that he's a Russian propagandist. I mean, I feel like sometimes the fine people hoax kind of gets buried under that because it was so egregious that you also had this other thing as well. And this goes to the point about how much of the lack of trust in the media is self-inflicted. The Gallup poll last year found 69% of Americans have not much or no trust at all in the media. And the media so often like to blame conservatives. They like to blame organizations like the MRC and our website Newsbusters, when really it is the media themselves that have chosen to go down this partisan path. And they have so little faith in the American people. You're talking about the president's comments there. They have no faith in letting the comments play out. They have no faith in letting Charlie Kirk's own words stand on his own. So they suggest, no, we need to somehow shepherd and shield the American people from these pesky opinions because they can't be trusted to make decisions on their own. And that is just why our society and culture are so broken, that we're not even willing to listen to each other. We have a mental health crisis in this country, and I think the media can play a part in bringing about the revival that we saw at the Charlie Kirk funeral by simply letting us hear each other.
Yeah, God, I really hope so. I hope that's where we go from here. It is sort of miraculous when you think about the way President Trump won this past election, the way he won all 7 swing states, the popular vote for the first time in decades, right? All of the things that we know happen in this election, the House, the Senate, despite the skewed coverage, despite all the lies they've tried to tell, despite the omissions, despite all of it, the American people actually have risen above it. I mean, they're so much better than so many of these folks in the legacy media outlets. But where do we go from here? I feel like this is a very unique time in our history. Mm-hmm. And I mean, to be a little cliche and say the things everybody's saying, it really is a turning point. That I think. Maybe it is contingent upon the media. Do you think these people in the media will learn anything from the past few weeks and do what you're suggesting, try to ease tensions in our country?
I'm doubtful, because even if they did, let's think about this. If the media looked at themselves in the mirror and said, we haven't always gotten it right, do you think their base would allow them to feel that, to voice that opinion? The Axios story from July 7th, Democrats told to get shot for anti-Trump resistance. I think that is such a huge problem. But if the media are as important as they say they are, if they are the bulwark standing in the way of those trying to undermine the First Amendment. If they are the embodiment of the First Amendment, the media have had a chance since Charlie Kirk was shot to lead. They won't necessarily regain trust right away, but they'll simply get some attaboys, I think, which is a good start for them if they've said, we haven't always gotten it right. We need to listen to the American people. We need to hear different voices, which is why places like CBS, I'm hopeful about the Ellison family takeover, and if Barry Weiss is able to be brought in at a senior role, that there are a few people there that I do believe could change. And there's a number of other networks that are doing this. But I think it's going to require a cultural revival that starts with all of us, but yes, does require the media, because as much as we don't trust them, we need all of us to come together and to be able to see each other as human beings, but also fiercely debate. And I think that's the lesson of Charlie Kirk, Larry. That Charlie Kirk did not compromise his principles, as we might have had a problem with our party in the past. But we show grace, we show humility, we see them as human beings and we listen to them, but then we provide truth. We speak truth. It's just like family members when they're in the midst of trial or tribulation, or loved ones, people we care about. We care about them, but we're going to tell them the truth. And I think that is such a huge lesson that we can take forward from all of this to not only how we deal with the media, but how we deal with each other.
It is a moment in time, and I hope we can look back on this episode and say, you know what, somebody out there was listening. We need everybody to get involved in this. You're exactly right. And truthfully, these people who are top notch in the media, wherever they are, they have to look themselves in the mirror, and they have to realize we got to where we are right now because of them. It is up to them, and it's their responsibility to help us get out of this and to get back to a place of sanity in this country, and agreeing to disagree, and civil debate, and all the things that make America the greatest country on earth. Where can people, Curtis, keep up with what you guys are doing at Newsbusters? I mean, it's great work, and it's so necessary right now.
Yeah, newsbusters.org, newsbusters.org, at Newsbusters on X and Facebook, Media Research Center on Instagram, and I am at Curtis Houck, CurtisHouck, all one word.
Well, you are awesome. We appreciate all that you do. Please keep them honest out there. Don't make sure they're not, giving us bad stuff. You keep them on their toes, and I think that all of us working together, maybe we can make some movement here, Curtis. But we appreciate you taking some time for us today, so thanks for being with us.
No problem. Pleasure to be with you.
All right, to everybody watching at home, as always, make sure you like, subscribe, share, and follow. We'll see you back here next time for more of The Right View.
And I won't back